Oh, I don't see who.
I see your name.
Oh, I see. Yep, I see. Yeah.
Okay, good.
Okay. All right, I'm going to start. I guess other people can join in late if they want.
Yeah.
All right. So in general, listing lead generation, there's really three kinds of seller leads. Actually, there's only three kinds of leads in general. There's always, a referred seller, a repeat seller, somebody you previously did business with, and then there's other. Now, other, which we'll get into, that's expired, for sale by owner, open house walk-in, farms, direct mail. There's a lot of that. Okay, so I'm going to talk about all three separately. Okay, referred, repeat, and other. I put other all in one category, even though I realize there's probably 50 subcategories of other. So anyway, the first thought I'd like to tell people is, I don't really differentiate between a buyer and a seller. I quit that years ago. That, I think our industry in general sort of thinks, well, sellers are better than buyers and buyers are lesser, but really they're just people. And, a buyer today is a seller tomorrow, and then when you sell their house, they buy another one. So I don't really differentiate between a buyer and a seller anymore. They're just a client. And so a fundamental question I always look at is, why should I use you? I think the essence of getting a seller or a buyer, but a seller in this class is, why should I use you? And so I look at the internet, and it's actually striving to make things programs. For example, you look at like instant offers, which is just a program. I don't know if anybody saw the article in Inman today about OfferPad. OfferPad is that financing arm that KW International uses for their instant offers program. They're not in Columbus yet, but now OfferPad today, literally today, just said that it's actually going to, and everybody should try to get that article. I could print it out and, I make copies of it. But that article said that OfferPad, in addition to doing instant offers, was also going to just do regular listings, almost like Redfin, where their people were going to be employees. And but still, they said in the same Inman article that they're still doing their joint venture with Keller Williams International to provide the funding when KW agents do these instant offers. Now, that's not in Columbus yet, so this is a little bit foreign to us. But trust me, it's like in 15 or 20 different cities. I was down in Florida, it was almost a year ago, my daughter's competition, and in the Uber ride, you heard about these things, instant offers, call us, we'll buy your house, no hassle, very easy. But those kind of companies are trying to attract sellers with a program. Instant offers, which is basically a guaranteed buy program. There's a few companies popping up that are offering programs to fund the repairs of a house, the home preparation services. Actually, OfferPad said that they were going to do that. They would pay for staging up front, pay for photography. Basically, they become a funding arm. So a lot of the big internet companies are going to use programs as their hook, if you will, to get the seller lead, okay, to get the listing. Many realtors have done programs in the past. I'll buy your house in 90 days. I've actually done a few guaranteed buy programs before. I've actually funded a few deals before up front on painting and things. They're really risk reversal tactics and they're convenience tactics, okay? But there's going to be more of that. And as a realtor competing against that, you really need to know how those like Zillow offers and OfferPads, and it'll be really interesting when Keller Williams does it. And I have a feeling we've got to be certainly on the short list of the next cities to come. They've kind of rolled out in like 3 or 4 cities at a time, okay? But anyway, with leading with programs, that's always going to be something we just need to know about because you're always competing against it. So if you think about it, one program that we're doing as an office, the office, is these office exclusives, right? And that's going to be, I think that those kind of programs are going to proliferate. So there will be I've got a couple sellers right now that are, remodeling their houses. They're 30 days out, 60 days out. Gosh, some of them are probably 90 days out. And I can put those on our office exclusive. And, they're kind of a version of coming soon. It's almost like taking coming soon programs back in-house is what they are. I noticed that Teresa Kenny did a few. I think Ryan Reynolds did one a little while ago. But office exclusive programs are almost just like a pre-marketing program before you go into an MLS database. Okay. And Joan, you may have seen some of these. I mean, I saw Teresa had two, I don't know, 2 days ago.
Hey, Tim.
Yeah.
I would say that almost half of our listings anymore, 45% are office exclusive.
Look at that. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's a program. Now, the interesting thing about that is the really small mom and pop brokerages are at a disadvantage to a bigger, say, Coldwell Banker office or KW office or any big brokerage. They might only have 3 or, I know some brokerages with 2 people, for Pete's sake. But even the ones that have 5 or 10, that is a program that I think there's going to be a proliferation of that. That's what's interesting about that whole clear cooperation policy, CCP. So they came out with that, but yet the first immediate thing that happened was a lot of brokerages are bringing their listings in-house. In fact, they're almost like they're not sharing them with the other realtors, right? Call it what it is. To me, an office exclusive, is kind of we're not cooperating or co-opting the money with another brokerage today. Isn't that what it is? It's not known by the other brokerages. So
I have a question about that.
Yeah, go ahead.
How is that best serving the seller by only allowing them the pool of agents within our office versus on the MLS?
Okay, you're going to get me started, young lady, I'll tell you. But it's that is the question. In fact, I am I am extremely well versed in coming soon and pocket listings and all. And so there's only 4 or 5 of us here, so I can probably speak freer. But it's interesting. I've read so many Inman articles, so many articles on this topic. In fact, I even taught a class on coming soon. But when you hear this topic of office exclusive or coming soon, the 2 issues that get talked about is, one, what Lori said, that you're not exposing it to the greatest amount of people. The other is that you're sort of, and they say it, you're discriminating against people. It's like, I don't know about that. I've done a lot of coming soons, and gosh, my last ones, they didn't look anything like me, trust me. I was clearly not discriminating. But to answer Lori's question, I was on a webinar, I don't know, a week or 2 ago, and somebody made this argument that the most exposure is not always the best exposure. Okay. And so you get into things like this. You get into like days on the market not accumulating. So Joan, I have a question. If something's an office exclusive, are the days on the market accumulating so that, say you're an office exclusive 30 days and then you put it onto MLS? When you put it on MLS, does it start with 1 day or 31 days?
1 day.
That's what I thought.
Yeah.
So one of the benefits of the thought was that maybe by limiting it to an office of 300 people versus 6,000 realtors, that you're actually able to not accumulate days on the market. Or if a house goes in contract under an office exclusive and then it falls apart on inspection or appraisal, and then you go into MLS, I don't think it shows as a back on the market, correct? It just shows as, so there are some benefits of it. But Lori, here's one thing, and I'll ask anybody this question. In fact, I've used Jack as an example before. I said, if I was, so I might as well ask him directly to his face. So Jack, if you're a listing agent and you have a nice listing in Ballantrae, or anybody, Paige, you have a listing, or Lori, you have a listing, you just have a nice listing, do you think that your seller comes out with I hate to say a better transaction, not necessarily more money, but a better transaction, easier, less stressful, more likely to close? So Jack, would a seller come out with a better transaction if you had the listing and you, Jack Curtis, also had the buyer? versus it being co-opted with another realtor, say at HER, just anybody.
Right. Well, probably varies somewhat on who the other agent is.
Oh, of course, of course.
But the ones that I have both sides, and I don't do a lot of dual agency, but they run pretty smooth.
You just made one classic error.
Yeah.
I rarely do dual agency.
Yeah.
And yet, in fact, I have two in contract now, 650 and 700. I have the buyer, but I don't. I don't like dual agency. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. But what I'm saying is, in general, if I have the buyer, or if you, Jack, or if you, Lori, or if you, Joan, if you have the listing, I think you believe that your client, your seller, comes out better if you actually get the buyer yourself. Okay.
Yeah.
And that's kind of a unanimous thing. And I guess it's pretty hard it's like you don't have to fight with yourself as much, and you kind of know maybe more the straight story of the buyer. There's reasons, you know. But the other point in this is, when I was kind of leading that mastermind, that one topic a couple weeks ago, with an office exclusive, what we can do is, we can put on an office exclusive, we can put the price, the address, we can describe in detail the seller situation. We can describe in detail the terms the seller's looking for. Like, the seller would like a rent back, the seller would like to close in 90 days. It's almost like a reverse offer. You could put it in an office exclusive like database. You could put so many more details that really don't even fit into MLS. Because you can put a lot more verbiage of their whole situation. You can talk about maybe just whole histories. You can write all kinds of things in an office exclusive that I guess you could put an addendum in an MLS. I just don't see too many people doing it. You could, but there's like, Joan, I didn't realize it was that high. I didn't realize that. Okay, I just thought it was starting to happen. But there's going to be a lot of this. Okay. And I guess theoretically, you should start seeing individual agents and our office in general just double ending a lot more transactions, I would think. I mean, but it is kind of funny, the byproduct of that clear cooperation policy. I think it was put into place to bring a level of fairness to the playing field. I think it really tried to get at realtors like not making a property available for showings, where a house would say coming soon, and a buyer and a realtor couldn't get in it, but then if the listing agent themselves had them, they'd show the property. I think it came about for a couple of reasons, but I really think what's starting to happen is a lot of brokerages are going to do these office exclusives, for a week or two or three or whatever. And again, when that happens, I guess we'll all figure it out. We'll look at it maybe 6 months from now or 12 months from now and say, is this really better than putting it through regular MLS? Because Lori's comment is always well taken. It sounds logical that more is better, but I don't know. I mean, and I'll just be honest, if I'm a listing agent, you, Jack, too, you, Joan, too, damn straight, you would much rather have a seasoned agent show your listing than somebody just licensed in 2020. I hate to say it, a newbie. I mean, we were all newbies one time, but let's be honest. If you had a seasoned agent show one of your listings, you sort of prefer that versus the newbie. It just feels like more probable. They can, and I know this, if you get two offers and all things are equal, everything's equal, the price, the terms, everything, the one thing you'll start looking at is the agent who has the buyer, and that's going to be the determinant. Okay. And hopefully everybody's the same race and religion, so we're not discriminating. But that is one thing we all do look at is so I guess the long answer to Lori's question is that more exposure is always, it's not always better. Okay. So these office exclusive programs, Joan, it sounds like Joan says there's a proliferation of 50% already, which I find astounding. I didn't think it'd be that high. What's that?
I'm shocked it's that high.
Well, I'll probably start doing a couple of them, especially when you know that days on the market's not accumulating. Okay. Because
Right.
I've got a house that they're doing a remodeling for the next 2 or 3 months. Well, I'm not going to put that in MLS when they're doing all this work, but I might as well share it on our office exclusive. If somebody wants to show it and is willing to walk over a bunch of contractors, have at it, you know. There's other programs out there. I don't know, Phil Herman had or has a program in Dayton. I think he's a Remax guy. I think it's a very unique program. I think it's really good. What he does is in the expired arena, he actually offers people a Visa prepaid credit card if they'll come in for a listing presentation. Again, he's leading with a program, okay? So he'll look up expireds and say it's a $100,000 house. He'll offer them $100 if they'll just simply come to his office to have a 15-minute listing presentation. If it's a $300,000 house, he'll offer them a $300,000. This is no strings attached prepaid Visa, just to have it. Basically what he's doing, he's willing to pay for and buy appointments, okay? I think it's a very simple idea. I think it's a good idea. But again, he's leading with a program. Programs do work, okay? They come and they go, they evolve, but they do work, okay? So again, this comes back to this question, why should I use you as a listing agent? And I think just because somebody has a program isn't enough, but they do work. They actually work at a high corporate level, they do work. So here's one exercise I want everybody to do, and you'll do it later, but just write this down. You need to develop your own answer to this question, why should I use you? I don't care if it's trying to get a buyer or a seller. You have to because they're asking it in their head. They might not ask you verbally that question, but they are asking it whenever you meet anybody. They always have in their head, why should I use you versus the next person or versus somebody maybe even they don't even know, just like they haven't even researched yet. So one exercise is just always try to, have that that 2 or 3 sentence, whatever it is, why should I use you? Okay. So one thought here is, and this is tied into the why should I use you, is as you're thinking about that, you'll have 3 main things in why should I use you. 3 main components might be, well, number 1 is expertise. I have expertise in this area, okay? Whether that's a certain location, a price range, new construction, investor homes, whatever you want to call expertise in. Number 2, why should I use you is, well, I'll provide full transparency, full disclosure, honesty, integrity. The third, though, is the one we hear about a lot is, I guess I call it empathy. People buy from kind of who they want to know you care about them. So the ability to convey empathy, something our president does not have. But the ability to convey empathy that I care about your housing situation, I guess. Maybe you don't necessarily care about them as much personally, but you care about their house, the housing situation, okay? But as you develop that answer to why should I use you, if you can show things like expertise, full disclosure, and empathy, that goes a long way for them agreeing to use you versus the next person. So now that was more in, so now we'll get into, okay, the 3 sources I said, where there's referred sellers, there's repeat sellers, and there's other. So in referred sellers, it's pretty self-explanatory. You've done business with the person, they like you, they trust you. Repeats next. Referred sources. Always assume this. If you're referred somebody, always assume you're still competing with somebody else. I can't tell you how many times I've probably been referred to somebody, and it's not just a layup. Yeah, it feels good, but you just have to assume there's somebody else in the mix, or even several people in the mix, okay? And so here's some questions that come out of getting referrals. Why do people refer? Why don't they? But more importantly, what can you as an agent what can you do to proactively increase the odds of people referring you agents? To me, this is like one of the holy grails of real estate, is that what can I do that would dramatically increase the odds of my clients or just people in general referring me people, okay? And these are big questions. These aren't easy programs. Anybody can offer anybody a visa just to come in and talk. But to really discuss and really dive into referral ideology, it's hard. There's not much really written about it. But I do believe if you try to figure out why do people refer you, why don't they, and what could you do to increase that dramatically? Okay, so referrals are self-explanatory. Somebody's just referred to you, okay? But I still think there are things that you can do. To me, the most important thing is that actually during the transaction itself, you actually really showcased something. I think if you do a great job for somebody during a transaction, that trumps sending them something for 10 years in a row. I guarantee it, 10 years in a row. After the sale is a lot harder. If you just did a mediocre job, to try to keep them as a customer or earn the referrals is hard. I think you earn the referrals on the front end when you're actually doing the deal itself, okay? And if they see that, I think you start running higher odds, they'll refer you, all right? You know, referral sources is basically a networking thing. They can be past customers. They can be lenders. They can be attorneys, CPAs, you know, financial planners, business owners, neighbors, church members, club members, your kids' functions, family. It can be any. I mean, referral sources is unlimited. But I think what you'll probably find if you actually like maybe study, you know, where referrals have come from, it's probably about 10%. 10% of the people that you really have in a database or a network, about 10% will refer you people. But could you think of what it would do if you could get that number to 30% or 33%? It'd be like exponential growth. It'd be huge. And so you just have to think of your whole database, not just past customers, and try to ask that question, what could I do to get more? What would make the odds of that go up? Okay, so referrals is, you know, it sounds easy. It's self-explanatory. You're either referred or you're not. Repeat customers is a very interesting animal because, you know, you've probably seen that survey that every year, it's the same survey every year that NAR does. It's pretty much 85%. So 85% of all sellers use a different realtor to list their home than the one who sold it to them. And I've been doing this a lot lately, and you can do it. It's easy. Whenever you're showing a house or setting up a showing, look to see if the listing agent is the person who sold them the house. You know, just click on the history, and you've probably done that before. And it's like 80%. Most of the time, the new agent is different than the one that sold them the house, almost at every price range. It's like a phenomena that most sellers just don't use the same realtor that sold them the house, okay? And that survey proves it every year, but if you just do it yourself, you'll see it. And so it's very noticeable. And there's many reasons why that occurs, that phenomena occurs. And the obvious one that people think of, the obvious, is, oh, you didn't stay in touch with them after the, right? You didn't stay in touch with them. I would challenge you with another exercise. Write down at least 20 reasons why you think that phenomena occurs. Why is it that most sellers use a different agent than the one that sold them the house? I actually believe there's lots of reasons, but I do believe the number one reason by far is that during the transaction itself, the agent, when they bought a home, I believe that agent really didn't impress them and really didn't wow them. therefore the person, the person trying to sell now, I think they really think that the agent was mediocre. They weren't wowed by them. So now they're easy pickings for the whole real estate industry itself. And so that's why I keep thinking that if you have a buyer, and that's an interesting thing that, with a lot of team development and, a lot in specialization, a lot of people, there's buyer's agents and then there's listing agents, but that's one thing that keeps referrals and sort of repeat from happening is one agent works with them as a buyer, say on a team, and then the people go to sell in 5 years. And next thing you know, that the person who's selling now was not wowed by the buyer's agent, and therefore somebody else gets the listing. And that just keeps going. That's been going on for like 30, 40 years. And you try to break that cycle. And so everybody should have as a goal to have a high retention rate. If you sell somebody a house, you should strive to have a goal of like 80%. I'll tell you what, way back in my RE/MAX days, I did it. I had an Excel spreadsheet. Tina Leggett, my assistant back then, she kept track of it. I actually had my first assistant, then Tina. And we tracked it for about, it was like 10 or 12 years. And it was like an 85% retention rate. If I sold somebody a house, I had a high rate of them repeating and doing it again. And that was with zero follow-up in between, because I haven't been a touch program guy ever in my life. So that means on the front end, I'm doing something right, okay? Because if I'm not staying in contact with them, there has to be something right during the transaction. Now, doing something after the transaction, touch programs, I think they're beneficial, but I don't even think they come anywhere close to doing a really good job on the front end, okay? So repeat sellers, the greatest way to get a repeat seller is just do a really whiz bang good job on the front end when they buy a house. Then you hope that they just come back to you and you have that high rate of repeat. Now here's something about, now we get into the other category, there's repeat, referred, and other. One of the interesting things about other is there's so many of them, but I'm just going to talk about a few. And I think one of the huge missed opportunities is actually at open houses. I know when I pretty much do open houses, half of the weekends. I did one yesterday. At an open house, I assume that at least 50% of the people who walk in, and this is 400,000 and up, I believe 50% of the people who walk in have a house to sell, okay? Probably in the 600,000 and 700,000 and up, it's probably 75% own a house, okay? And they walk into an open house. Now, they're out there looking at houses to buy, obviously. I try to switch the whole discussion to, I always try to find out if they have a house and where they live. And on the fly, I try to talk about their area right there on the spot. And I know that kind of gets people off guard a little bit, because obviously they're looking at houses to buy. But again, if 50% of them or 75% of them have a house to sell, I've had a lot of success in just switching the narrative, start talking about their house, okay? I've seen that many times when I'm actually on a listing presentation. Many times on a listing presentation, if I start talking about the house they're buying, or if they're building a house, I may go on a listing presentation and talk more about what they're buying. So never think you're just there for one reason. So if you're doing an open house, do not think it's just to talk to them about that house for sale or buying a house in general. If you can find out they have a house for sale, you can almost switch that whole discussion. And if you've got a laptop or you're tech savvy right there, you can even send them something right there on data in their neighborhood. And a lot of times that impresses them. The other thing you can do is you can start having an honest conversation about home sale contingencies. So when people come to open houses and they have a house to sell, something inevitably is going to happen. Inevitably, they're going to fall in love with a house. They're going to want a house, whether it's that open house or some other house. But there's one humongous problem. if they have a house to sell, lots of luck. So at an open house, it really it naturally leads into the discussion. If you have a house to sell, let's really, really talk about home sale contingencies. At a minimum, get your house ready for sale. You know, because they may look at an open house every weekend. I've seen people amazingly, you know, for a year or two at open houses, they go out every weekend looking at houses, and inevitably they find a house, and they better be ready to go. If they dare think they need to do a home sale contingency, they better at least have it ready, because you're not going to have the time to get these things done, the home preparation. So again, open houses, I think, are a real missed opportunity to actually get to get listings, to get seller listings. Expireds, you know, they'll always be there. Expireds will always be there. I think the key to an expired is somehow you have to convince them that you can get the job done. All right. So, and let's face it, usually it comes down to you better have an honest discussion about price and an honest discussion about improvements needed. I recently had one, it was about 6 months ago. It was a good house, and they were kind of listed at the right price. I think it was 600, and they were listed with the CIMAC group, you know, and it didn't sell 6 months. I don't exactly know why, but it didn't sell. And somehow they got a hold of me, and when I talked about them, you know what happens. They always want to blame the other realtor, you know, and they blamed her for not communicating. Okay. Now, as soon as that came out, I said, stop. Communication has never sold a house and never will sell a house. But let me tell you what does. You need to paint those 4 rooms and lower the price 10 grand. They painted 4 rooms, they lowered the price 5 grand, and the house sold with Drew Fitzgerald in 1 showing. Now, let's face it, Cynthia's an A+ realtor. It wasn't lack of communication that thwarted that selling. It's that there were like 4 rooms that really needed painted, and the price had to be at $599. And as soon as it did that, it was literally the first person who walked in January, by the way, in the cold, bought the house. So when you're talking to expireds, the real key is, can you have a real discussion about price and condition? And usually it's about making the house better. And you see it all the time. You'll see in expireds where the house didn't sell, and the next thing you know, there's another realtor, and it's exactly the same thing. It's the same price, it's the same pictures, that nothing changed. So now what that realtor's doing, they're basically going in there and saying, yeah, the other realtor didn't communicate with you, I'll communicate better. Or the other realtor didn't do open houses, I'll do open houses. When the truth is, it's all PC, it's all price and condition. Get the P&C better, you'll get PD, payday, okay? Get the price and condition better, all right? For sale by owner sellers, whole different story. Their issue is they don't see the value in either you or any realtor for that matter. That's why we've had so many of those limited service companies, you know, the very low fee, you know, MLS companies. And it looks like those guys are around for a while, or to stay. They'll be here to stay, and it looks like there'll probably be more of them. So with for sale by owner, now the real key is to demonstrate value, okay, and to say, here's why you should use me versus versus those kinds of companies. I guess there's probably still some true for sale by owners, the real hardcore ones where they just put the sign in the yard and they really try to do it all themselves, where they're not even offering the co-op. If you think about this, and again, you could do this, anybody can do it. You could actually talk to a for sale by owner, and you could actually give them all the best advice in the world. You could actually tell them, get a professional sign, get professional photos, get a lockbox. When there's a showing, don't be there, because you'll thwart your own sale. Here's the code. You could actually do everything like we do in real estate world, and their chances of selling it, they do go up, okay? But they would only go up a little bit, because the one thing that they really would have trouble with is the negotiation phase, and the fact that they would be speaking directly to a buyer. And that's very hard for people to do. It's like, that's why people in a lawsuit don't defend themselves. They get an attorney. Even if they are an attorney, attorneys get attorneys to represent themselves. So, and even, well, you've seen even some realtors even get other realtors to do their deal, you know. But the problem with for sale by owner is they now have to talk and engage directly with the other person, and all these little technical things come up about inspections and loan approvals, and so again, for sale by owner is just, you know, trying to give them some value to say, here's again why you should use me versus those limited service companies. Other ways of getting listings, I guess, advertising, you know, postcards. You know, there's always that big direct response marketing, you know, where you're running ads, you know, the 10 sins every seller needs to avoid when selling. There'll always be those kind of ads, I guess, to get the phone to ring. I think that's an expensive pay to play program if you want to get into that. But you know, people do it. I guess, and here's one final thought, and I don't know if these things cut off in 45 minutes or not. I'm not even sure, these Zooms. One final thought was to get sellers to get listings, try to get them to fall in love with a house. Now, what I mean by that is, you know, we always know people that are like a potential seller, a maybe seller, they're like a soft seller. Well, the key is if you could really, really show them a really, really good house, or you know of a really, really good house. Now, all of a sudden, you know what it is. As soon as they fall in love, they'll have their house on the market tomorrow. So a lot of people that are like maybe sellers or soft sellers, the reason they're just like a kind of will sell in the future is we don't really know where we're going. We don't have anything. So that's why they're in just looking mode. And even people at open houses are in just looking mode until they find a cherry. And then all of a sudden there's 3 people trying to buy it. And now they're all fear of loss. You know, so if you can put a really good cherry house in front of somebody, oh, trust me, they'll get off their butt that night and list their house with you. Again, that's all predicated, of course, upon finding the cherry house. That's why I always come back to this thought in real estate, that as a realtor, you always have to have your thumb on the pulse, or your finger on the pulse of the buy and the sales and the listing side. Because again, remember, it's a person and they're going to do both. And so if you can find really good houses, in fact, if you think about it, you could just know of a really, really good house. And I've done this many times. If you know of a really, really good house, call somebody you don't even think is looking for a house at all and watch what happens. If it's a really, really bona fide good house, call a few people that you think it might be a fit for and watch what happens. I've done that before, where I'll know of a really good house that I'm going to be listing, and I'll make a couple phone calls. And all of a sudden, somebody not even that I've talked to about moving, all of a sudden, I'll tell you what, it's interesting. I had one at over $1 million, like 1.1 million. I hadn't talked to the guy in 8 years. I sold him the house. I had not talked to him in 8 years. I called him up. One guy said, if you're even in the realm of selling, Bob, I got a guy who'll give you like $1.1 million for the house. House closed at $1.1 million, just like that. That was a guy not even in the realm of selling. So one way of getting listings is to have either a really good cherry buyer or a really good house, and just try to prompt it a little bit, okay? And so again, I know there's lots of ways of getting listings. I tend to believe in the repeat and refer concept. I guess I like open houses and expireds, but I think that if you can mix and match some people, and that requires having a database of buyers and sellers, yeah, those are the easy ones. If you can just call somebody and say, look, I've got somebody who'll buy your house, don't be surprised if they might not get off their butt and decide, hey, we'll sell this. And I notice that at least it gets them thinking about it. It might not get them to sell today, but it gets them thinking about it. So, well, I think these things are just 40. I don't know if it's going to cut it off here. Does anybody know that these Zoom calls, the timing? Oh, I can't hear you, Joe.
We have an unlimited account, so it can go.
Oh, I didn't know that. Okay,
Yeah.
I'm sorry. It must be through mine with the REIL group. For some reason, okay. I don't know if I have too much more to talk about, like in did anybody have any real questions? I mean, I know we do a lot of talking here.
Tim,
Yeah.
have you ever done farming?
No, I haven't. No, I haven't. Like geographic farming in neighborhood.
Right.
No, I know a lot of realtors do, where you just send out the postcards every 2 weeks or maybe once a month. No, I never have. I've done what I would call houses wanted programs, where I would send out, mailings to neighborhoods. That's when I have a buyer, though.
Right.
But see, I'm not really trying to get a listing. I'm really trying to find a house for a buyer.
Right.
But as far as geographic farming to get listings in themselves, I guess that's advertising, but no, I've never really done it. I know obviously people do it. I guess I classify that as a pay to play program. And I guess the more you pay, the more odds there are that, do you send out 1,000 a month? Do you send out 2,000 a month? Do you send out, you hear of people sending out thousands. I mean, 5, 10, 20,000.
Lena Diamaco.
I mean, I don't know, 40, 50,000. I mean, that's an expensive pay to play program. I'm not going to knock it. I guess it works. It's just, to me, it doesn't sound like that's the best use of the money and time. Because again, if you think about it, those are really the only two things we have is time and money. And where's the best use of that? And so I think geographic farming works. It just depends on how many you send out. And if you keep doing it, the consistency, probably once a month, probably every 2 weeks. And most of that, if you think about it, is just, and I hate to, talk about Delina, but she's one of the bigger ones. Gosh, she's probably been doing it 20 years, at least 25. That's simply a name recognition thing. That I guess if you send out enough postcards with your name on it, and they just get it every 2 weeks for many, many, many years, I guess that's just a name recognition program. They call it a postcard program. It's really a name recognition program. And so, no, but I've never done that. I guess if it's, and let's face it, she's not doing one neighborhood either. She's doing like whole cities,
Right.
Yeah.
Do you get sharper impression painting postcards at your house?
I don't know. I might.
Lori does.
What's that?
Lori shaking her head. She does. He sends out hundreds of thousands of postcards every month. The same exact message over and over and over, and that's how he gets all his business.
Yeah, I guess if you get into that kind of programs, I think you got to go big. I think now again, I'm sure he didn't start with 100,000, but he may have started with, I don't know who's really, I mean, I know Delina does it. I don't know who really does that in a big way anymore, geographic farming. It seems like so much of the dollars and time have switched to like internet related programs, but if you think about it, like, Commissions Inc. and Boomtown, those are all like buyer stalking, buyer generator things. They're not really, yeah, in fact, I'll be honest, the number one way I know of getting a really, really good listing, here's the secret. The number one way to get a really, really, really good listing is sell a really, really good buyer a really, really, really good house, okay? And wait 2, 3, 4, 5 years until they get divorced or transferred or want a bigger house or want a smaller house or got to take on their mom or just adopted a kid or just got a dog, whatever it is. And if you do a really, really good job on a really good buyer and a really good house, you have really, really good chance you'll get a really, really good listing back. And so the real key to that too is, remember this, a cherry is always a cherry unless somebody messes it up. So the one key about it, of selling somebody a really, really good house, is if they call back in, a couple years, whatever, the first thing you better do is go through your database and say, who would buy that house? And you run really high. I just did it on a house in Wedgwood. I listed a house for $700,000. I made 3 phone calls, and I probably had 10 more people to call, and it sold immediately in one day. It was an absolute cherry house. Well, on really, really, and so now the people that bought this really, really cherry house, I know when they go to sell it, and how many years it is, it will probably be a really, really good house still. So that's just the cycle of real estate. If you sell a buyer a good house, what you hope to do is have them call you back and be a seller. and they're another buyer again. So it's 2 more transactions. All right. But if they get out of your fold and into some other realtor's fold or into the corporate fold of some program related thing, yeah, it was one and done. You sold a buyer a house and you're like 80% or 85%, you don't get them back. And you think about it, that's sad. You think about it, it is extremely sad to think in general that our industry, we have to spend so much time and money and energy acquiring, you know, a buyer, working with the buyer, and then they buy a house, and then whatever, 5 years goes by, 10, whatever, and they don't call you back. And it's like, wow, so the easy money, the repeat part, and by the way, if they call you back, they're also a buyer too. So it's really 2 more transactions if they're staying locally. And I think it's sad when I see that number every year that, man, 85% call somebody else. That's just a lot of wasted efforts that never really gets into the gravy. The gravy of real estate is the repeat and refer. It's the repeat part. And they rebuy, you know, resell and rebuy and keep going. And if you can't get there, well, then you've got to do the pay-to-play programs. And that's what's interesting if you think about it. And I always talk about this in education classes. What fascinated Einstein was exponential growth. And I've always been fascinated that why can't a realtor get to a level that they have so much repeat and refer, they have a problem. They have like a mathematical problem, okay? Because you hear it. Many people say, well, I'll do this geographic farming, or I'll do these postcards, I'll do whatever, until I have enough repeat business and referred. Guess what? They never get there. And so I think it's like doing drugs. I don't do drugs. Don't do drugs. Once you buy into those pay-to-play programs, realize what you've done. You know, Delina sold her soul to that 25 years ago. So did Sharper Image or whatever they are. So I don't want to say it's bad, because I think it works to some extent, but realize once you sell yourself to the pay-to-play programs, I think you're in it for the long haul. They never seem to get off it, you know, if you go big like that. I think, you know, Greenwell did it. I mean, a lot of realtors have done it, right? I mean, but it seems like there's probably better places to spend the time and money. So anybody else? I think I'm out of ideas here.